My name is Tiffany Gordon, and at 36, I stood on the stage at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, clutching my master's degree in law. After 4 years of late nights and sacrificed weekends chasing my dream of becoming an independent lawyer, this was supposed to be the most unforgettable moment of my life. I scanned the audience, searching for my parents, Deborah and Edward Gordon, hoping to catch their proud smiles. But instead, 3 empty seats stared back at me, right where they had promised to sit. They hadn't come. I had planned this day for months, sending them the date, the time, even a map to the auditorium. "We're so proud of you, Tiffany," my mother had said, her voice warm but rushed, as if her mind was already elsewhere. Then came the excuse they were too busy. Busy with what? A small party at my sister Shannon's house, celebrating a contract she had just signed as a freelance event planner. A party that, in their eyes, mattered more than my graduation. I had thought this degree would finally make them see how hard I had worked. I was wrong. As I stepped off the stage, my phone buzzed in my purse. A text from my mother. "We need to talk urgently." Moments later, I noticed 30 missed calls from my father, all within the past hour. My heart raced. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I could never have imagined that, just minutes later, my life would change forever. How about you? Have you ever felt invisible to your family on one of the most important days of your life? Share your story in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. I've lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, for the past 10 years, carving out a life in a modest one-bedroom apartment just outside downtown. I work as a junior lawyer at Harper & Stone, a small firm handling family disputes and estate planning. It's not glamorous. Long hours poring over contracts, mediating messy divorces, drafting wills for clients who argue over every penny, but I love it. It's precise, demanding, and fuels my dream of one day opening my own practice, taking on cases that truly matter to me, like helping single parents navigate custody battles. That dream kept me going through the toughest years of my life. My parents live about an hour away in a quiet suburb in the same split-level house where I grew up. They're both retired now. My mother was a school secretary, my father, a mechanic. They spend their days gardening, attending church socials, and doting on my older sister Shannon. Shannon, 40, is a freelance event planner, always hyping up her latest gigs as if they're the talk of Charlotte. Her most recent big win was a $10,000 contract to organize a small wedding. It's not exactly high society, but you'd think it was the event of the year the way she brags. My parents hang on every word, treating her like a celebrity. Meanwhile, my years of grinding through law school barely earned a nod. It's always been that way. Shannon was the outgoing one, charming everyone with her energy. She'd throw backyard barbecues or school talent shows, and my parents would gush about her creativity. I was the quiet one, buried in books, winning debate competitions and academic awards, but those achievements never seemed to matter as much. "She's just so vibrant," my mother would say, as if my straight-A report cards were invisible. My father would add, "She's got a real spark." I learned early on that being reliable and hardworking didn't get the same applause as being flashy. When I decided to pursue my master's in law, it wasn't just for my career. I wanted to prove something, to myself, to my parents, to the world. I enrolled in the part-time program at UNC Charlotte, designed for working professionals like me. For 4 years, I lived a double life. Full days at the law firm, 3 nights a week in class from 6 to 9 o'clock, followed by hours of studying at my tiny kitchen table. Weekends were no better. While friends went to brunches or weekend getaways, I holed up in coffee shops, highlighting case law until my eyes burned. I skipped concerts, birthday parties, and dating, all for this degree. The schedule was brutal. I'd wake at 5 a.m. to prepare court filings, work a 10-hour day, then rush to campus for lectures. By the time I got home, it was past 10, and I still had assignments to finish. I survived on coffee and sheer stubbornness. My parents knew how hard I was working. Occasionally, they'd call to check in. "You're always so busy," my mother would say, her tone hinting that it was somehow my fault. Meanwhile, Shannon posted photos of her latest event setups on Instagram, sparkly centerpieces, budget floral arrangements, captions like living the dream. My parents would comment with heart emojis, while my updates about surviving finals earned a polite, "Good job, Tiffany." The worst part wasn't even the exhaustion. It was the isolation. Law school wasn't just about coursework. It was about proving I could handle the pressure without breaking. I'd lie awake at night, wondering if it had all been worth it. Would this degree finally make my parents see me the way they saw Shannon? Would they understand that my quiet determination was just as valuable as her loud confidence? I told myself it would. I picture them at my graduation, clapping as I walked across the stage, their faces glowing with pride. That vision carried me through sleepless nights and endless deadlines. Shannon's constant need to be the center of attention didn't make it any easier. She'd call sometimes, dropping hints about her latest big project, while barely asking about my studies. Once, over coffee, she laughed and said, "I don't know how you do it, Tiffany. All that studying sounds miserable. I'd rather be out making things happen." Her words stung, but I brushed them off. She didn't understand what it meant to build something lasting, something bigger than a one-off event. But my parents bought into her hype. They drove into Charlotte for her client meetings, helped set up her events, while my requests for a quick visit during exam season were met with excuses. "We're tied up with Shannon's latest project," my father would say. "You know how busy she gets." I tried not to let it get to me. I focused on my goal: finish the degree, pass the bar, open my own practice. I saved every extra dollar from my paycheck, building a nest egg of $60,000 to fund my dream. It wasn't easy. Charlotte's cost of living isn't cheap, and law school tuition ate up most of my disposable income. But I was determined to make it work. I told myself that once I had that degree in hand, things would change. My parents would finally see what I had accomplished and maybe, just maybe, stop putting Shannon on a pedestal. Looking back, I realize how naive I was. I thought a piece of paper could shift decades of favoritism. I thought my hard work would speak louder than Shannon's showy charm. But as the months passed and graduation day approached, a small, nagging doubt crept in. Would they really show up for me? Or would Shannon somehow steal the spotlight again? 6 months before graduation, I started planning what I hoped would be a day I'd never forget. I wanted my parents, Deborah and Edward Gordon, to see me walk across the stage, to feel the weight of what I had achieved after 4 grueling years of law school. I called my mother on a quiet Sunday afternoon, catching her as she sorted through old photo albums. "Mom, my graduation is May 15th at 2 p.m. I really want you and Dad there. It means a lot to me," I said, my voice tinged with excitement. She paused, then said, "That sounds wonderful, Tiffany. We'll put it on the calendar." Next, I called my father, his voice rough from a long day in the garage. "Got it, Tiffany," he said. "Sounds good." Their words felt like a promise. I clung to them, imagining their proud faces in the crowd. I spent weeks searching Charlotte for the perfect restaurant to celebrate afterward. I settled on Mol's Vita, a small Italian place downtown with warm lighting and homemade ravioli. It cost $300 to reserve a table for 4, including myself, a splurge, but worth it for a milestone like this. I booked it on my credit card, pushing aside the sting of the expense. Then came the dress, an emerald green sheath, simple yet elegant, perfect for wearing under my gown and for dinner afterward. I even booked a hair appointment at a nearby salon, a rare treat for someone usually in practical sweaters and jeans. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of joy instead of the usual grind. I sent my parents an email with every detail: date, time, auditorium location, even a link to parking instructions. "I can't wait for you to see me graduate," I wrote, adding a hopeful, smiley face. My mother replied the next day, "So proud of you, Tiffany. Looking forward to it." My father's response was short: "Thanks for the info. See you then." I read those messages over and over, picturing them clapping as I accepted my master's degree. It felt like the finish line was finally in sight. 3 weeks before the big day, that hope flickered. I was at my desk, reviewing a client's custody agreement, when my phone pinged with a text from Shannon. Hey, I'm throwing a small party on May 15th to celebrate a new contract. Just landed a $10,000 wedding gig. You should come by after work. My stomach twisted. May 15th was my graduation day. I had told Shannon the date months ago over coffee when I was buzzing about finishing my degree. Had she really forgotten, or was something else going on? I called her, gripping the phone tightly. Shannon, your party's on my graduation day, I said, keeping my voice steady. I told you the date. Can you move it to another weekend? Her response came fast, light, and careless. Oh, Tiffany, I totally forgot. But it's not a big deal, right? It's just a ceremony. My part is for a huge career move, and I've got clients who can only make it that day. Her words hit me like a door slamming shut. Just a ceremony. 4 years of late nights, skipped vacations, and endless case law reduced to nothing. I tried to reason with her. Shannon, this is my master's degree. It's important to me. Can't you pick another day? She sighed, as if I were making things difficult. Tiffany, relax. I already sent invites, and it's too late to change. Besides, Mom and Dad can probably do both. It'll work out. I ended the call, my throat tight with frustration. Do both. My ceremony was at 2 p.m., and her party started at 4, across town. It didn't add up. I had hoped my parents would prioritize me. But Shannon's breezy confidence made me doubt. Was she deliberately pulling their attention away, like she always did with her flashy events? I didn't have proof, but the thought lingered, sharp and unsettling. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my apartment. I'd spent months imagining my parents in the audience, their faces lit up as I walked across the stage. Now I wasn't so sure. Shannon's party, her so-called huge career move, felt like a shadow creeping over my moment. I told myself they'd show up, that they wouldn't let me down, but a quiet doubt whispered that I might be wrong. The morning of graduation began with a flutter of anticipation in my chest. I woke at dawn, too restless to sleep. Knowing this was the moment I'd worked 4 years to reach. I slipped into the emerald green dress I'd bought just for today. Its smooth fabric reminded me how much this milestone meant. Over it, I pulled on my black graduation gown, pinned my cap in place, and checked my reflection. The tassel swayed gently, a symbol of every late night and missed weekend I had poured into my master's degree. I took a steadying breath, telling myself this day would be everything I'd hoped, no matter what. I arrived at the campus auditorium just after 1 p.m., blending into the crowd of graduates in identical black gowns. The air hummed with excitement, classmates posing for photos, parents holding flowers, siblings waving balloons. I scanned the faces, searching for my mother or father, clinging to hope that they'd show up despite Shannon's party. Maybe they'd chosen me this time, I thought, holding on to their vague promises. But as I moved through the lineup, gripping my name card, there was no sign of them. My stomach tightened, but I pushed the doubt down, focusing on the moment. I had earned this degree, and I was going to walk that stage. The ceremony began at 2, graduates filing into the familiar strains of pomp and circumstance. I took my place in the alphabetical lineup, eyes darting to the audience. The seats were packed, faces blurring under the bright lights, but none belonged to my parents. I kept telling myself they could be late, stuck in traffic, or circling for parking. But as the university president spoke about perseverance and new chapters, a cold realization settled in. They weren't here. They'd chosen Shannon's party over my graduation. When my name was called, Tiffany Gordon, Master of Laws with Honors, I crossed the stage. My heels were steady despite the ache in my chest. I shook the dean's hand, took my diploma case, and moved my tassel from right to left. The applause was polite, the same for every graduate, but it felt empty, like it belonged to someone else. No one shouted my name. No familiar cheers broke through. I forced a smile for the photographer, but the loneliness was crushing. This was my triumph, and I was facing it alone. Back in my seat, I clapped automatically for other graduates, my mind spinning. I had given my parents every detail, practically begged them to come. Why weren't they here? Shannon's $10,000 wedding contract couldn't possibly outshine this. The doubt I'd felt after talking to her weeks ago sharpened, cutting deeper. Had they ever meant to show up, or was her spotlight always going to win? After the ceremony, graduates spilled onto the lawn, families reuniting in bursts of hugs and laughter. I stood on the sidelines, my diploma case heavy in my hands, watching parents embrace their kids and snap proud photos. I felt like an outsider in my own victory. I pulled out my phone, hoping for a text from my mother or father, an apology, an explanation, anything. There was nothing. Out of habit, I opened Instagram, scrolling through classmates' posts with their families. Then I froze. Shannon had posted a photo an hour ago, right during my ceremony. It showed my mother and father at her house, raising wine glasses in a toast with a small group. The caption read, "Celebrating my big contract win with my favorite people." My breath caught. They were at Shannon's party, smiling like my graduation didn't matter. I zoomed in, seeing my mother's proud smile, my father's arm around her. The hurt hit like a wave, raw and overwhelming, stealing the air from my lungs. Another feeling stirred, cold and sharp: suspicion. Shannon knew my graduation date. Why had she picked today for her party? It wasn't just a coincidence. I had been climbing in my legal career, planning to open my own practice, and she always seemed uneasy about it, as if my success threatened her. Was this her way of keeping the focus on her? Of pushing my moment into the shadows? I shoved my phone into my purse, hands shaking. I tried to hold on to the pride of my degree, the years of work it represented. I posed for a few photos with classmates, forcing a smile as they chatted about their family plans. But that Instagram post burned in my mind, a wound I couldn't ignore. I headed to my car, the diploma case heavier than it had any right to be. I'd planned a dinner at Leal's Vita, but now I wasn't sure I could face it alone. Something felt wrong, and I was starting to think Shannon had made sure of it. Leaving campus, the diploma case on the passenger seat felt impossibly heavy, weighing down the hollow moment I'd just lived through. I hadn't checked my phone during the ceremony, too busy crossing the stage and pretending everything was fine. As I merged onto the highway toward my apartment, I glanced down, expecting the usual silence. Instead, my chest tightened. A text from my mother glowed on the screen. "We need to talk urgently." Below it, 30 missed calls from my father, all within the past hour. My grip on the steering wheel tightened, dread rising in a sharp wave. What had happened? I pulled into a gas station, my pulse hammering, and called my father back. "Dad, what's going on?" I asked, my voice unsteady. His reply came fast, strained with panic. "Tiffany, it's Shannon. She fell at her party, down the stairs. She's hurt bad. She's in the hospital now. We need you here." My mind spun. Shannon hurt. The image of my parents toasting at her party flashed through my head, reigniting the sting of their absence. Which hospital? I managed. He gave me the address, Carolina's Medical Center, 10 minutes away. I hung up, torn between worry and the raw hurt still burning in my chest. I drove toward the hospital, the Charlotte skyline fading into dusk as my thoughts churned. Part of me wanted to turn around, to let them handle whatever chaos Shannon's party had created. But another part, the part still tied to them despite everything, pushed me forward. I parked and rushed into the emergency wing, my graduation gown still folded in the back seat. In the waiting area, I found my mother and father, their faces pale and tight with fear. "Mom, Dad, what happened?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. My mother twisted a tissue in her hands, her eyes red. "Tiffany, thank God you're here." Shannon was drinking at her party, celebrating that new contract. She tripped on the stairs, fell hard. The doctors say she broke her femur and has a mild concussion. She needs surgery. $50,000, maybe more. We don't have that kind of money. My father nodded, his voice low. Her freelance work doesn't come with good insurance, Tiffany. We're out of options. Can you help? I froze, their words crashing over me like a cold wave. $50,000. I had $60,000 saved, every penny scraped together to one day open my own law practice. Years of sacrifice, budgeting, and discipline. Now they were asking me to give it up for Shannon, the same sister who had scheduled her party on my graduation day. "You're asking me to pay?" I said, my voice shaking. "After you didn't show up for my ceremony? You were at her party, smiling for photos, while I stood alone on that stage." My mother flinched, her voice cracking. "Tiffany, we wanted to be there. But Shannon said her party was critical for her career. She said it was a one-time chance to impress clients, that your ceremony was just a formality. We thought you'd understand." Her words cut deeper than the empty seats ever had. A formality. I stared at her, anger flaring. Shannon said that? She knew it was my graduation day. I told her months ago. Why would she call it a formality? My mother hesitated, eyes dropping. She said her contract was more important, that we needed to support her career. We believed her. My blood ran cold. Shannon had known exactly what my graduation meant to me. This wasn't an oversight. It felt calculated, like she'd planned to steal my moment. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, remembering an email my mother had forwarded weeks earlier, when I barely skimmed during finals. I opened my inbox, scrolled, and found it, an email from Shannon to my parents, with me accidentally copied. "My party is a huge career move. Tiffany's graduation is just a formality. She won't mind if you skip it to support me." The words burned through me. Undeniable proof. "Mom, you sent me this," I said, holding up my phone. "Shannon told you to skip my graduation. She planned this on purpose." My mother's face crumpled, her hands covering her mouth. "Tiffany, I didn't realize. I thought she was just excited about her contract. We're so sorry." My father stepped closer, his voice pleading. "We made a mistake, Tiffany. But Shannon needs the surgery. Please, you're our only hope." I stood there under the buzzing hospital lights, torn between the family I'd spent my life trying to please and the betrayal I could no longer ignore. Shannon's email wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, a way to keep my parents focused on her, to dim my moment. And now they were asking me to sacrifice my savings, my future, for her. The air felt thick, their eyes heavy on me, waiting for my answer. But all I could hear was my heartbeat, pounding with years of being pushed aside. Standing in that hospital waiting room, my mother's apologies echoing and Shannon's email burning in my mind, I felt the weight of their betrayal heavier than ever. My parents' pleading eyes. My mother's crumpled face. My father's desperate voice. They were asking me to give up my future for the sister who had deliberately tried to overshadow me. $50,000 for Shannon's surgery. Nearly everything I had saved. $60,000. Every penny set aside for my dream of opening my own law practice. I stood frozen, the hum of the hospital lights amplifying the storm inside me. Could I really do this for a family that had chosen her over me? I took a deep breath, my hands clenching into fists. "I'll pay for the surgery," I said, my voice low but steady. "But this is the last thing I'll ever do for this family." My mother gasped, reaching for me. "Tiffany, please. We didn't mean." I cut her off, shaking my head.
"No, Mom.
You made your choice. Shannon made hers. I'm done." My father's face fell, but he stayed silent, his shoulders slumping. I turned away, unable to look at them any longer, and walked to the hospital's billing office. I arranged a bank transfer for $50,000, watching my savings, the foundation of my future, drain away with a few keystrokes. It hurt, but not as much as years of being pushed aside. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the confirmation email from Lulz Vita for the celebratory dinner I'd planned. I had pictured my parents there, toasting my master's degree. But now the thought felt hollow. I called the restaurant and canceled the reservation, my voice flat as I explained I wouldn't need it anymore. The server hesitated, then said, "I'm sorry, ma'am." I hung up, a strange calm settling over me. That dinner was supposed to mark a new chapter, but I realized I didn't need their approval to start it. I needed to let go. She presented her report, detailing our sessions and my clear-headed responses. Mr. Hayes tried to poke holes, asking about stress from my divorce, but Dr. Clean didn't waver. "Stress doesn't equal incapacity," she said. "Ms. Warren's decisions are deliberate and sound." I took the stand next, my hands steady despite my nerves. "I supported my family for years," I said, keeping my voice even, "but when I realized they were using me, I set boundaries. That's not erratic, it's self-preservation." I handed Judge Carter my evidence: performance reviews showing consistent promotions, bank statements reflecting stable savings, and emails from my employer confirming my reliability. Mr. Hayes pressed me, suggesting I'd acted out of spite. "I acted out of necessity," I countered. "They demanded money while excluding me from their lives." Judge Carter listened closely, pen moving as he took notes. "Mr. Lawson closed our case, voice firm. Ms. Warren's family has no evidence of incapacity, only vague claims and hearsay. Her records and Dr. Clean's evaluation prove her competence. This lawsuit is an attempt to manipulate her into compliance." Mr. Hayes argued back, but his points felt hollow, leaning on emotional pleas about family duty. Judge Carter called a recess. I sat with Mr. Lawson, barely breathing. "You did well," he whispered. "We've got this." When court resumed, Judge Carter delivered his ruling. "The plaintiffs have failed to provide credible evidence of Ms. Warren's incapacity," he said, voice clear. "Her financial decisions, supported by documentation and expert testimony, are rational. The case is dismissed." Relief flooded me, my shoulders sagging as Mr. Lawson squeezed my arm. Elaine and Clarence sat stunned, faces pale. Mr. Hayes gathered his papers, avoiding my gaze. I had won not just the case but my freedom from their control. As I left the courthouse, the weight of months lifted. I had faced their accusations and proven them wrong. My life was mine again, and I wasn't letting anyone take it away. 3 months after the trial, I stood in my new apartment, watching the Buffalo skyline. The view was different here, higher, brighter, with city lights stretching out like a promise. I had moved out of my old place, leaving behind the weight of family visits and accusations. This new space, with its clean walls and uncluttered rooms, felt like a fresh start. I spent the morning unpacking, arranging my books and a few plants, making it mine. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next demand. I had signed up for a cooking class at a nearby community center, something I'd always wanted to try, but never had time for. The instructor, a cheerful woman named Linda, taught us to make pasta from scratch. My first attempt was lumpy, but I laughed as I rolled out the dough, flour dusting my hands. "You're getting the hang of it," Linda said, giving me a nod. I felt a spark of pride, small but real. Cooking wasn't just about food, it was about building something for myself, piece by piece. I had already mastered a decent marinara sauce, and risotto was next on my list. My evenings were spent planning a solo trip, another step I'd never dared take before. I spread brochures across my dining table, circling destinations: Italy, maybe, or a quiet beach in Maine. I had saved enough thanks to the money I was no longer sending to my family. The idea of traveling alone, choosing my own path, felt exhilarating. I jotted down notes: a cooking school in Tuscany, a coastal hike in Acadia National Park. Each plan reminded me that my life was my own now, not a resource for others to exploit. I had heard through a mutual acquaintance that my parents and Elaine had moved into a cramped apartment on the edge of Buffalo. Elaine was working 2 jobs, a cashier at a grocery store and a night shift at a diner, to cover their debts. They had lost the lawsuit, and without my support, their lifestyle had crumbled. Part of me felt a pang remembering the years I'd tried to keep them afloat. But that pang faded fast. They had made their choices just as I had made mine. I didn't wish them harm, but I wasn't their safety net anymore. Sitting at my desk one night, I wrote in my journal, something I'd started after the trial. The words came slowly at first, then poured out. I wrote about the years I'd spent tying my worth to their needs, believing I